it's Danny, otherwise known as Psycadillo, and welcome back to another tech review. It's been a while since we've done any gaming mice on this channel, but what better way to return than with the Logitech G502X gaming mouse. Just as a disclaimer, this mouse was sent to me for review purposes, but all opinions and conclusions that I've come to are all my own and aren't influenced by Logitech or any other third party. If you're no stranger to my channel, you'd know that I've been religiously using Logitech mice since early 2015. Of course, back then it was a result of a wonderfully timed gift, but now as an older and wiser gamer, I've opted to stick it through with the brand as they've proven to be the best in the biz. Being someone who tends to stick more with the budget options for peripherals and tech, it's always a pleasure to be able to playtest higher-end models that have every bell and whistle in the book. And what better example than the Logitech G502X wired mouse. If you've ever wanted a mouse that will wow your friends and confuse your parents, the G502X is the perfect candidate for the role. This absolute unit has a total of 12 buttons positioned across the mouse, each one programmable for the ultimate gaming experience. But we'll get into this later. If you're part of the no wires nation, this will not be the mouse for you, as the G502X is a wired model. But for those of you that love your mouse bungees and don't mind a bit of desk clutter, this is a solid option for your next mouse. Jumping into the looks, the G502X sets itself apart from other high-end models as, aside from the insane amount of buttons, the mouse is sleek and simple in design. The G502X features a few stylistic differences from its predecessors, like the softer and more rounded aesthetic rather than hard geometric shapes and lines. And it has a good variation in matte scheme with glossy accents, perfect for keeping fingerprints off, and a textured wheel as well as side grips. The mouse comes with two color variations. I was sent the white and grey one, a far cry from the usual aesthetic I go for, but the mouse also comes in black. If your aesthetic or preferences swing towards RGB everything, this is how the G502X differs from its counterparts. It doesn't have any. But that's for good reason. Logitech has doubled down on making the G502X lighter, much lighter. Coming in at 89 grams, it's definitely one of the lightest mice I've had the pleasure of using, as I preferred the feeling of my mice gliding while playing FPSs. In order to improve the weight, several changes had to be made, sadly resulting in the sacrifice of RGB. For one, there's no LED system behind the Logitech G symbol, button, or anything in between. Additionally, Logitech made the decision to opt for a plastic scroll wheel as opposed to a metal one, while still including the infinite scroll. Speaking of the scroll wheel and its infinite scroll abilities, I'm gonna get a lot of heat for this, but I wasn't a fan. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, or maybe I just don't know how to use it, but there's just something about feeling the notches on the wheel as it turns and hearing the clicks. Something about it just does it for me. I found the infinite scroll to be a bit buggy. Once again, maybe I just didn't know how to use it, but I found it to jump around quite frequently even after I had stopped scrolling, and it drove me insane within about 10 minutes. Fortunately, the mouse comes with a button that allows you to switch scroll wheel modes depending on your preferences. Despite the light weight of the model, I found that the G502X has excellent build quality. Feeling solid in my hands, I never once felt like I could crush it with just one loss of a game, which is great if you play competitively and tend to get a little bit triggered. This leads us to the grip and how the mouse feels in use. In short, if you have tiny hands, you might struggle to use this mouse as it's quite big. I was able to use it without too much discomfort, as I'm fortunate enough to have stupidly long fingers. But for those with smaller hands, you may struggle to make use of the sniper button featured to the left of the mouse, as it might just be out of reach for you. Speaking of buttons, all the buttons seen on the mouse, except for the scroll wheel one, are programmable. Truthfully, this isn't something I make use of, but it's great for customizability for those who want it. The sniper button of the thumb rest is also completely modular and can be removed in order to change its orientation or to swap for an alternative flat panel that will disable use of that button. Honestly, considering the fact that I'd have to scooch my hand up the mouse in order to comfortably use the sniper button, I'd likely remove it to reduce the bulkiness of the mouse. Since this isn't a wireless model, let's head on to the wiring. I'm quite fussy with my wiring choices, and I tend to steer clear of anything that will tangle or unravel. Not a big fan of braided wiring, I won't lie, but the G502X features a thin and rubber cable that seems to temporarily retain kinks from its packaging, but doesn't create a detriment to its usability. It's long and flexible enough to not get in the way. Although it isn't braided like some of the previous models, it doesn't snag or curl up, working super well with my mouse bungee. Heading into the more technical side of the review, as it's the nitty-gritty details that most of us care about when watching these kind of things, let's start with the introduction of the new optomechanical switches. These Light Force hybrid switches combine an optical speed with mechanical actuation, which is fantastic on paper but pretty difficult to test speed-wise. There's a far more resounding click to the newer switches in comparison to its predecessors, but this is likely due to the lack of additional internal components, LEDs, as a result of improving the weight. These switches also require slightly more force than normal to activate. Nothing too extensive, but this just guarantees your teammates' safety as you're less likely to snipe your own teammates when startled. The G502X has a fantastic click latency of 2.1 milliseconds, providing a responsive in-game experience, and the optical sensors have 4 polling rate options, that being 125 Hz, 250 Hz, 500 Hz, and 1000 Hz. But the big question that I'm sure you're all asking yourselves is, should you buy it? If you're a fan of ergonomic mice, a lack of RGB, and have an average to medium-sized hand, this is the mouse for you. Its slanted design paired with a thumb rest and longer buttons boast improvements that we didn't even know we needed from the Logitech G502 line. And if you're willing to pay the higher price tag, this is probably the way to go. However, if your hands are on the smaller side like mine and you're looking for something that won't break the bank, this might not be the mouse for you. But to sum up my thoughts and feelings, the Logitech G502X was a fantastic idea for a higher-end mouse and was actually one of my favorite mice that I've had the pleasure of testing. Should Logitech decide to make one that's slightly smaller or more inclusive for smaller hands, then I'll be sure to pick up one of these units for myself. The lack of RGB was a bit disappointing, but definitely not a deal breaker. So, that was the review. Thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't already, give this video a like, subscribe, and comment down below if this is a mouse that you'd want to try out. If you own the mouse, let me know your thoughts, your feelings, everything about it down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in another review.